exactly. Yep, and in my minutes, you see that we did, my maintenance man did the front piece in front of the facility on the rocks. We took the rocks out, and I was hoping to get it done, and I knew I couldn't leave it all winter long, not to have it done, so.
I was just shocked at those numbers.
It is, we made sure the exact measurements, and it is apple to apple. There's a huge difference.
The measurements are the same, Brian. I think when you look at them, I chuckled at it too because of that, but I think there's some rebar differences between the two, and I think that the other one simply raised his prices.
Yeah, and we did talk to both of them after the meeting and said, you know, we'll be happy to rebid it. We'll call you. One said you can call in April, but we probably won't get done with everything we're getting done with this season, and so it could still be June, July-ish type thing if they get caught up type thing. So, and maybe at that time we'll just open it to anybody else that locally that we kind of know that could do something. So. Otherwise, we got a different December board meeting. Dr. Groh signed off on his medical director duties, and Dr. Hankey has agreed to be medical director because they do need an MD, and CHI does not have an MD at this time.
He was approved then by the state or whatever, said the paperwork.
Yep, everything's in. Yep. So worked out good, and we're working on health insurance. I'll be coming forward in March is our due date, but what I kind of had proposed and what was working, we thought through the association is not going to work out so well for us. That's it.
Thank you.
Did you just find that out, that the association would work?
Yeah, the prices are higher than what I have.
Really?
So can we please add my contract on for the December meeting?
I was not given a copy of it, so.
I don't have it either.
I didn't know anything about it, otherwise I would have put it on there, so sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Cold weather keeping criminals inside?
No, not really.
The numbers were really bad. Questions for the chief?
The dogs, Bruce, understanding that they get a ticket or something for a dog at large? Did I read that somewhere?
Yeah, that was off the Stewart incident. Yep.
What about the dog bite that happened by the school?
The situation there was the night of a storm. She took the dog inside the house. Next morning on the way to work, she was walking the dog out, back out to the kennel. Young girl walking to school, walking along the edge of the curb. The dog took off after her. The owner of the dog yelled at the girl, just stand still. She took off after the dog. The young girl, for some reason, reached down and tried to pet the dog, and the dog nipped her. And the owner was able to get the dog, throw it back in the kennel, and the gal was taken up, looked at, so.
Because I heard a report that it was brought to your attention and the little girl was told to go on to school.
No, that's false.
Okay.
She walked right past me, didn't say a word to me until she got into the school and the school administration came and got me.
So you witnessed the whole thing happening?
No.
Oh.
No. Nope. Okay. I wasn't aware of it until the school administration come and got me.
Okay. Was there any citations issued for dog at large or dangerous dog or anything like that?
Nope.
Why not?
The dog's not at large if it's on its own property.
I don't know where it was. If it's not under the supervision of the owner, it's running at large, but that would be a separate question. But your point is you intend to defend the dog owner and there's not going to be any citations?
The dog owner was walking the dog to the kennel in her own yard.
Mm-hmm. And it bit a kid.
Was the kid trespassing?
No. The kid was not on the property.
Was the dog on a leash?
No. No.
So that's against both the ordinances then, that a dog must get on a leash.
Not on their own yard. They can be off the leash.
Okay. I didn't think it was in the yard, but okay.
So was the girl in the yard then? Or
No.
did the dog come over the curb or?
The dog come up to her next to the curb. The dog never left the property. The dog never entered the street.
But,
The girl never entered the yard.
so then how did the bite occur? If the dog didn't go onto the street and the girl didn't go into the yard?
Because she's walking right along the edge of the curb.
Okay.
I
The
mean,
dog chased this girl?
no.
Okay. Didn't we understand the little girl was running away?
No.
Okay.
I don't
In any
use-
event, hit a kid and no citations at all.
That's right.
Does the police department consider going to school and maybe telling kids how to not approach dogs? Would that be a possibility, talking to school administration or something like
Yeah,
that?
it could be.
It just seems like we're still having problem after problem and nothing is getting resolved. So I just think that we need to follow through the ordinances that are in the book and issue citations when needed.
I owned a black lab for I don't know how many years. And that dog was never tied up in my yard. If the dog is on your property, you do not have to have a leash if it's under your supervision.
I understand that. I heard a different report, not saying that you're not telling the truth and not saying that my resources is accurate as well. I just think that there's some conflicting arguments on both sides that we can agree to disagree. So it is what it is, but. Okay.
The other part of that is maybe we need to have a little article in the paper about how dog owners should take their dogs from their house on their property to their car, so that everybody understands how you control your dog, whether you think you're in control or not. At least those people that take the paper might read it. If you don't tell both parties what the problem is, then you can't expect anybody to solve the problem. Unless you do some education.
Anything else? Thank you. Economic development, Susan?
Pass this on. We got a thank you note for a sign program. You ever get thank you notes, so
Well, that's
thought I'd share it with you. I'll leave the community club out for now since we'll talk about it later. On the housing trust fund, since my report was submitted to you, the state did come forward with their $500,000. So we did start the closing process with the Pierce County Commissioners being the pass-through for that funding. And they are saying that we'll have to come up with that $50,000 match. So I'm working with NENED and the Nebraska Community Foundation on coming up with that match for everybody. So, and currently, at the time of this report, we had 17 people in, and we now have 22. So hopefully we'll have some good use out of that program. On the downtown revitalization, we submitted our grant on October 21st. We should hear back before the council meeting in December if we are awarded that. So as soon as I know, you'll know about that. A little bit of different process on that. When we do get awarded the match, we'll have to bid out the corporation or company that we're going to use to do the plan in downtown Plainview. So we'll have to bid it out to 3. NENED and has worked with several, and I've talked to communities around us that have worked with several different organizations. So we'll pin down 3 and then submit that for bid, and then you guys will choose an entity. But during that process, they'll come and they'll pitch. They'll give you guys proposals on why you should select them and what they all tackle downtown revitalization in a little bit different way. So expect that to come up. You may have seen some of the flyers that Courtney and I have been working on, the promotions that are coming up for Christmas. We're doing the window decorating contest, the Adopt a Planner program. There's going to be a gift basket giveaway. We'll kind of announce that one as soon as Thanksgiving is over. And then the Chamber is planning a soup supper Saturday, December 7th at the Catholic Fellowship Hall. this will be a free will donation. Serendipity's doing the soups, so guaranteed to be really good. And then the Plainview band and vocal students will kind of perform between 5 and 6, so that'll be kind of a fun thing for us. Let's see. I'll leave the IRP for later, it's on the agenda. And then on the community building, the new one that we're proposing, we are actually still getting people joining the steering committee, so I haven't pulled the group together yet, because every week there might be one, sometimes there's two, so we're still kind of pulling everyone together. But I did put in my report a few different proposals of how we might look at funding that, versus doing a huge capital campaign. So those are things that we'll talk about when the steering committee meets, so if you guys wanted to sit in on those, you're more than welcome, especially as we discuss that possibility of increasing sales tax or doing other things. And we talk about ownership of the building as well. Is the city, should they be having the ownership of that, or how does that look? So if you guys had input, that'd be great. So I will let Courtney know when that steering, if she's on the steering committee, she'll let you guys know. So if you want to join us, you're more than welcome. And I think that's it until we get to the other two items, unless you have some questions.
So does this say that there's already been a $1 million pledge?
Yes. Yes. And $2 million in grants are definitely, I've already received basically a verbal $500,000. We were to submit an application. It's a project that falls into this particular organization's scope. They want to be part of that. And then the other ones are CDBG, $450,000, and then Community Facility Foundation, which is $600,000.
So they
used it for this library. Yeah. And we weren't able to use it for this library before when we initially started talking about this program 2 years ago, because if you use it, you're kind of prohibited for a certain amount of years. It finally dropped off. So we're eligible to use it again. Yeah. So we've got some, so we're about halfway there, really. So.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you. City Superintendent?
He's gone.
He's gone.
He's gone. He took a vacation and said he's never coming back. So.
To a warmer climate?
No, he's around. I just saw him today too. So, on the city superintendent side, I just more or less ask any questions if you have anything as far as snow removal or things of that nature. We're prepared. Did have a little problem with the sander, but Troy worked on it. So if you were wondering, he was going to actually take the sander out a little bit this morning. It would have been a nice test run because it was a little slickery. But I mean, we're going to probably have a lot more of those slick days coming up. So he took the sander and got it working, operational. Kurt's gone for about a week and a half. So, and he's on call. I mean, if I had to reach him or something like that, his daughter's coming back to stay with him. And it's getting close to deer season and all those kind of good things. So, well deserved. I mean, he's been working hard. So.
Can I ask on the one corner when you turn off of Highway 20 to the Manor, that one is oftentimes very slick, and I do think it's a snow emergency route with that corner. We're on it a lot with our residents, things like that, but.
No, in fact, we talked about that this morning, Julian. It's that First Street. I mean, it's already on a slant. I mean, it's got everything going against it. And I'm afraid that someone, if they do it, which was one of the ones, would have hit right away. So normally with the sander, that First Street entrance coming off Highway 20, along with, I believe, West Street, there's one on, that West Street is deadly. And
Main Street by the Congo
I think
Church.
any streets that are up towards the highway, going towards the highway.
So those are the ones that we talked about, and they'll be, like I said, like you said, it's on the snow emergency route, which will be sooner than later, probably being worked out. I hope later. So.
Want to go right into yours?
Yeah, I can. There's only a couple things, and because we'll get right going to the hearings and that, then I can answer some questions later on. There has been concern and talk now that the election's over and you're retained, Julie. So you're on board. Is having an executive session with the police and the chief of police and working that out. It was upon our staff meetings. It would be nice, and they would all like it. All personnel would like to be at that executive session. if that, because there's a lot of issues to be worked out. I got to work it out with Bruce too. I don't know if it can even fall.
I think that's a stretch. I mean, why would that not just be a public meeting?
I would like to have that then, special meeting and that, and Courtney and I've talked about it, and the staff, and the staff want it, but they want it together. They want to make sure that everything is brought forward as it's supposed to be, and there won't be any innuendos. This particular election has been nothing but an us versus them type thing, and it's I've talked to most of the council about it, but it was unfair to some of the people who had nothing to do with it, and certainly got called, and in as recent as today, even still being called snakes. And Brian, I understand you're supposed to take care of those snakes, so I'll leave that in your court to take care of, but it's unfair to the rest of the staff that have to listen to that, over and over again. This isn't an us versus them. This is, the city staff still has a job to do, and we still have been trying to do that all along, despite of, the particular election. So I'm glad it's over.
I think the sooner the better to have this meeting, public meeting with all the employees would be best.
Mm-hmm.
So
We had even set and talked about a particular date to throw out, but we can do that later on too. Do you remember what date we talked about? Monday, possibly of the 20.
I don't know, I'd have to look.
Yeah, we'd have to look to see what it was. We thought about a Monday or something like that. But I think before you go one to the other, there's a lot of things I need to talk with Bruce Curtis about too. But just want to make sure that the council is aware of the staff would like to be present whenever that conversation's held. So, other than that, I can't think of anything else. You got plenty of things on the agenda and people out here to see different things.
Number 7, discussion action bids for community building remodel.
Okay. So, been on this track for a long time. We have the original bid from Higgleman, and he was nice enough to break that out, I believe. So
He kind of did, but it's not.
and then Evan submitted 2 bids.
Can he explain his bid anymore, Evan?
That the second bid is just carpet and paint and nothing else. That's it. So if you look at the first bid that Higgleman did, we could get everything that we wanted, the 3 offices, the boardroom, and all of that for about the same cost. I was contacted by a husband. They want me to write them a grant because they want to build a building to do the exact same thing that we want to do here with this one. So it would be disappointing to have 2 co-shared networking spaces in the same county when we've got a building that could be there in like a couple months. So.
Well, repairs need to be made because it's just a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we get the water problem solved? Are we working on that?
Not yet, right?
No.
What do we have to do with that?
Oh, an act of God. I mean, it's the way the design, it's a design flaw. We probably have to work something on the west side to actually elevate it and then go ahead and seal that. I mean, Grant's out, and I'm looking at him because he knows how that continually flows in. And the answer we've had over the years is to take that spout and run it out to the street or run it back to the back, and either way it causes a water, and I know there's damage to those walls because of it. So I think that it would be nice to at least look at, and Susan has, I mean, I'm not going to say she hasn't, so part of this is to take a look to see how we can there's a seal, you can actually seal it from doing a little bit better job than what the design allowed. So and that may be the quick fix.
There's a concrete seal, and what's nice, at least on the floor there, is that it's concrete. You can seal that so the water doesn't seep through, is basically what it's doing right now because it's porous. It will stop that part from happening. So if we were to put new flooring down there, we wouldn't have the buckling issue that we're having right now. And we specifically, when we did the bid, we did carpet tiles just in case that back wall, that east wall got that again, we could just rip that and just rip it.
Something, or is it insane to put down carpet and paint and not have the roof fixed first?
Oh, yeah.
They're not
That's what I was
missing it.
asking, yeah.
I don't know,
How
Grant,
could
you're
that
right,
should be
it's
a
not the
discussion?
roof.
It's not the roof, it's actually, the way it looks to me from looking at it, this is back when we used to sit in the water, when I was on council. I don't think you're getting rid of the water on the west side of the building fast enough. I think it's just staying there when your floor is at the same grade as the water outside.
Nonetheless, it has to be
You have to go in there
stopped.
and put some sort of a
The
small
two
drain.
contractors that looked at it,
Until
they
it's
called it a
stopped.
stem wall. It needs a stem wall. You need to put one in.
Is this the Thrasher Company? Isn't that what the Thrasher Company does, is take care of those kinds? Have we talked to them?
I don't think we've talked to the Thrasher Company. No, she had
Isn't that
looked at
their,
them.
but isn't Thrasher Company that's specifically for drainage and basements and?
Yeah, but when the contractors that looked at it, they looked at that wall. They went outside and looked at the outside of it. A couple of those times, Kurt was there, Mike was there. You know, the city guys were involved in that. And it's a stem wall that's needed. That was not put on the building when it was constructed, which should have been. They estimate the stem wall to be about $15,000.
Well, that needs to be done first. I mean, in order, I mean,
And this
before
has
we put,
been muddling around in a circle for 2 years. Everybody hates the word engineering fees, but don't you maybe need somebody that's good at this to make a plan and bid the plan and fix it?
You could bring in an engineer. I mean, I'm not saying you can't. I mean, it was done by, who was
Everybody
the,
has an opinion.
was that a BC builder? I think it might have
Yes,
been.
it was. Been around
So, I mean, it
1992.
might be, behoove us to go back, BC builders and, have them take a look at it. They're not gonna do anything with it, or, unless it costs. So,
Yeah, I mean, basically you've got an empty building, and the longer it sits, the worse it's gonna get. There've been a couple opportunities to put some businesses in there. There's people that we could use that space for different things. Doesn't have to be a network space, but we've had some options for certain things. But with that water coming in, and I don't know if you need an engineer. I mean, maybe you just need a contractor to come and say this is your problem.
But to bid it,
Yeah.
someone has to write specifications. You can't just say, what do you think, Joe? You have to say, this is what we want done, bid it, to get meaningful bids. Your what do you think, Joe, gets you one guy building walls and one guy putting down carpet and one guy painting. That's why you don't do it that way.
So at this point, if you guys want to bid, it probably needs to come from the city.
yeah, I have no problem. I need direction
You
from
know?
the council. Right
Yeah.
now, you've asked Susan, and she's done a good job of getting together contractor bids on what the inside would look like. But if it's truly the direction you want to go, and go ahead and get it bid out on the government platform, so to speak, I can do that.
I just
But
am
I
in
need
favor
to
of
say
getting that
Needs to
done.
be fixed no matter what we do,
Is that a consensus?
Yes.
yeah.
I'll leave it up to you, Mike.
I got it.
Okay.
You guys
Got
okay
it.
with that? Pam and Brian, are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good. Number 8, discussion action, employee and city board appreciation party, December 13th, clown cash for employees. In the past, we've done 50 for full-time and 25 for part-time, but is that right?
Yes.
Is that what you're looking for?
I just want to
Similar?
know if you want to have a party or not.
Would you like to have a party on December 13th, on Friday the 13th?
Objection, I guess.
Yeah, I think it'd be good for the employees.
Yeah.
And all the boards and...
Would you want to continue that, Brian, to include, as we have for the last, I think, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years, the boards?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I can't make the motion, I can only make the recommendation.
I'll make the motion to have the holiday party on December 13th, include all the boards.
I'll second.
Do you want a separate motion for the clown cash or include it in? For the...
I guess I didn't see that
Oh,
on
sorry,
here.
it's underneath it.
Oh, down there. Yes, can I please include the motion for the clown cash as well? Thank
Do you
you.
want the same as it's been before?
Yes.
You good with that now? Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Pam? Tyler?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Motion carries. Quickly, number 9, discussion action, special designated license 4D hospitality, doing business as D&K Lanes, December 31st, New Year's Eve, 3 p.m. to New Year's Day, 2 a.m. for a street dance. Randy, you got 2.5 minutes. We'll make it quick. He's discussed this with me a couple of times. I said, I think it's a great idea to have a street dancing Plainview.
I've noticed that we don't have anything else outdoor, and they do it other places. I've heard it's going to be cold, but we'll take care of it. We'll get some heat lamps or something.
You're going to try to get some kind of a ball to drop or something?
I'd like to do some. We discussed a little bit on that chamber meeting, but just something to be active in the community on New Year's Eve. Planning on hiring a DJ and having a street dance, sort of like what Clown Day is what I've done, but instead of a van, have a DJ. Have prizes, big people, a balloon drop of some sort, a ball drop, all kinds of things, just something for the community.
Mike, have you talked to the street guys about this in case there's snow and ice and
Well, we'd have to.
something like that?
Yeah, I
They're
think that
okay
would be contingent upon, first of all, we'll have to look at the power needs, which we've got there anyway, we've had in the past. But then it would be a matter of how we would handle the, in case of snow removal. So, yeah.
So no snow date.
New Year's Eve can't have snow day.
I know.
Or no.
Well, I'll make a motion for the special designation license for D&K lanes for December 31st from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Second. Pam?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
We'll hope for good weather. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay, number 5, public hearing, LB 840 at 7 p.m.
Due to Kevin Lindenfeller having a conflict tonight because it was Wednesday, I was, through a very strict process, selected.
We appreciate your presence.
Basically, I just got a rundown from the last quarter for what LB 840 committee's done. Everything on here you guys have probably already voted on or at least ordered, but let's just go through the motion, I guess. As you know, in June, Plainview received a rural business development grant for $80,000. This was with a match of $25,000 from the LB 840 funds. That being said, last month or the month before, you guys approved the $25,000 loan for the purchase of the pharmacy. So that was the first time it really been put into motion. A few other things we've got going on is, and you'll talk about it tonight, so I won't talk too much about the IRP. I see it's on the agenda. So Susan will talk about that a little bit. A few different things we've done is the sign program. You saw the thank you come around from the Plainview Community Housing. That was a $100 sign. And then next month you'll probably see an application come through for the pharmacy. They've got Love Signs designing one. We have a meeting coming up here in the next few days that we're going to talk about it, but that'll be $1,000. They're redoing the whole sign out front.
So their sign's really $2,000 from Love
We don't
Sign?
know. We only loan up to $1,000.
I thought you only loaned half for a sign.
Up to
Yeah,
half.
Up to 1,000.
Up to 1,000.
Well, I got half for that sign.
That's why you get half up to 1,000.
Half up to a sign. Half, so if you had 1,000, you get 500.
Should have put a fancier sign up.
We don't have limited funds. We did appreciate the $100.
Okay, so a few of the other projects that we worked on for the LB 840 loans were Keystone Bar. We did the patio tables and stuff that sat outside. They got a little late start. They really wanted to have them by Clown Festival, but by the time they got here, it was a little past due. But they do look nice. They have cleaned up that back beer garden area. It looks nice back there. So, and then in July, we did a loan, a short-term loan for J&S Interior, woodworking shop downtown. He's in the process. He'll have that paid off pretty shortly. So that was just a short-term loan for the project that you guys probably read about at the school. He's doing the doors at the school. So, and basically that's about it. Any questions that maybe I can answer? I guess that you guys are pretty much aware of everything that's going on. So.
Anyone from the public have questions for Grant? What your money's being used for?
Okay.
Motion to close the hearing, second? All in favor, Pam? Tyler?
Aye.
Bob? Julie? Okay. Let's see. Number 10, discussion action water meter system updates.
I think you probably have more of that than I do. I don't know. Is that just a The water meter updates is still going along with the idea that we're on a temporary fix with the ERTs. They're just going to need new water meters as time goes. So as we look at the costs overall, it's just going to be an ongoing thing each year. And as we see more and more, I think they're falling off. Melissa, what was our last fall off? How many did we lose on the last one?
We fixed 15 and we had 25 this last month that replaced the 15.
And that's normal right now
Yeah.
because they're all about 15 years old and they only have a certain life, and we're just seeing that. But so we're going to keep it on here because the water meters themselves are a lot more expensive than the ERTs.
Right.
But I don't think we can continue to do the ERT temporary fix forever. Kurt was hoping, but you also, the council's aware that we were looking at much higher costs 6 months ago too. So that's about the only update I have on that.
Okay. Number 11, discussion action on ordinance number 950, updates to payment policy for disconnects, water, sewer, and trash.
I've got a handout for you.
Okay.
Let it get down the road. You don't need to read from the top, it's not all new. Explain in a moment. This is a recopy of the existing ordinance on how you manage subscribers and water system and so on. Everything is word for word from the code book except number 9. And number 9 there at the top of the second page is new. This was what Courtney had brought up, that if there had been 2 or more disconnects during a calendar year, there would be a requirement that they set up some sort of auto pay agreement so they don't keep getting cut off and reinstated. So that's the new item. And the practicality of it will still have to work itself out. Some folks that don't have money are going to have trouble setting up an auto pay. But nonetheless, you can certainly make the effort and it might solve 2/3 of them or something. So that's the only change. The rest of it is just a recopy of your ordinance. That's really the only way to amend it properly is put it in there. So you need to pass this as an ordinance if you're going to do it, and then wait second, third reading.
Well, I will make a motion to pass ordinance number 950 and to waive the second and third. Oh, sorry.
All right.
One at a time.
Second?
I'll second.
Second, okay. Pam?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes on the first reading.
I'll make a motion to waive the second and third reading.
Second?
Aye.
Tyler? Bob?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Motion passes on the second and third reading and is in effect. Let's see. Number 12, discussion action, ordinance number 951, water and sewer rate increases.
There I'm left with some level of uncertainty. In the code book, we've got specific rates all the way down. I didn't try to type in numbers. For one thing, I didn't have exactly what numbers you needed, but Mike needs to give you his suggestions.
Well, the one from that guy that came a couple months ago, right?
Yeah, we
And
can
then you
reprint these and whatever.
You had it last month.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you can come up with, there's one water, one sewer, fill in the blanks and either let me know and we'll reprint clean for Courtney or whatever you wish to do. But those are the various alternatives. Are you saying, Mike, you're thinking you're just going to take numbers directly off the recommendation? Do we have them here in front of you?
We'll just have the ones we had, the rate comparisons that I gave last month for the water and the sewer, and certainly, Bruce, I can get them, we can clean this up. But if any of the council has their notes and minutes from last month, you will see them, and they're broken down by the 3-year process. So the base rate is on the left. For example, the base rate for water's 1124, which is already in the code. So I'm looking at going to 1425, then to 15 in the second year, and then 1575 in the third year. So
are you, all I've given you here is something setting a rate. Do we want to put it in the code book that we're going to have this step rate raise?
I leave that totally between the council and you. I mean, I
didn't know what the decision is, so I really couldn't make anything final.
I am suggesting that we do it on a 3-year ordinance step. That way it would allow you as a council not to revisit this every year and you have to do this, but you certainly can go 1 year at a time.
Or we can say rates according to the attached exhibit adopted and give that to Courtney and we can get it typed up somehow. If you're going to do exactly that, I just didn't know what you were going to do.
They need to be raised, unfortunately. I'd rather have the 3-year plan and rather than do it every year. And that way everybody knows what's coming. You have that exhibit then? Mm-hmm. Okay. Perfect.
Go ahead.
And we all saw it last month, right?
Well, then we'll modify these drafts and just say according to the 3-year schedule attached, and that'll be it.
Okay for tonight, or do you need to modify it for next week?
How fast would you try and do it, Mike? You want me to type them up? Are you going to?
A lot depends, and I had this conversation with a couple of the council people. In terms of what we need budgetary-wise, the quicker we can get this in place, the better your budget's going to look, because the budget was based on these rates going up incrementally. But you have the decision here to waive, if you want to go ahead and pass this, and then waive it the second and third readings, and it becomes immediate. Then Bruce and I can work on it. If you choose not to, then we'll work it 1 month at a time, but I don't want to tell you what to do. I'd prefer to have it as quicker the better.
Well, if the council is adopting that theory, then just say, these ordinances, numbers, whatever,
951,
according to the schedule presented, and we'll type it up that way. Excuse me.
Number 951 and number 952. Is that what they'd be then?
or can they both be the same number?
Or two different ordinances?
51,007.
Yeah, there were 2 of them on the agenda. And there are 2 of them in the code book.
There's 3.
I saw one.
950 and 952.
Yep. Well, again, if we're going to clean up the printing, I can combine them if you want. I just need to know the answer you want.
Well, if you're gonna have a special meeting, you could put this on that agenda to a special
Let's do
meeting
that.
too.
Yeah.
Instead of,
That way it's cleaner.
we're all confused as to what we're,
Okay, somebody give me a copy of that schedule.
Yeah.
that's fine, so I'll want that back.
I could send it to you electronically. I got it.
Okay, you'll send me one.
I'll send you one electronically tomorrow.
All right, we'll have them ready then, and you're going to, why don't you make it 2 ordinances? I mean, that's the way it is in the code book now, so we'll pull them apart. Okay.
Number 13, discussion action resolution number 593 IRP grant funding.
So I think you're pretty well versed on what the IRP is, why we need it, and why we went after it last May. Basically, tonight, all we need to do is, if you are in agreement of accepting that $400,000 IRP, just sign the resolution, which I think Bruce has. Maybe you have a copy of it. Yeah. So this would look very similar to our RBDG program, where 77% of any loan funds going to come from the grant, and then 23% will come from LD 840, and we will match as we go. The only difference between the two is that on the RBDG, Because that is only a $105,000 revolving loan fund, the maximum loan amount is $25,000. On the IRP, the maximum loan amount is $250,000. You do bigger loans.
For us, some of us, what does IRP stand for?
Intermediary Lending Program. I had to think about it because I've been calling it the IRP for like 2 years.
I still call it the RDVG, the RVTG. So.
The USDA likes their acronyms. Basically, it's just going to give us more of a control locally of our financial future, being able to keep these things in-house versus having to deal with outside banks or loan review committees in Norfolk and that kind of thing. As we approach our DTR, our downtown revitalization, the biggest benefit we're going to see from this IRP is to our business owners. One of the things I've seen drag out in my job at Creighton, we just applied for the 3rd round of the DTR. We're dragging, I mean, it's, so you get X amount of dollars at the beginning, you know, 400,000, we'll get 450 because they give more now. But the committee that sits there and looks at all the applications, they're trying to help as many business owners as they can to do their project with 75% free funding. So you limit, you know, how much you're going to give these owners. Well, things happen. You know, your project you planned on, now you have a bad roof, so you're going to do that, and you don't need as much money as you were given, or something came in under, or you just went out of business, or just a number of things. So then you end up with another pool of money for round 2. With the same people that were in round 1 coming back for more money because they didn't get enough to finish everything. And so currently, we just went into round 3 for the 3rd year. These businesses have now been under construction, more than a handful of them, 3 times in 3 years, which is a pain. So if you were able to have access to some kind of fund where they could use the grant funding and then pull an IRP, low interest loan to do it all at once, get what they want, that's the biggest benefit that we could do for them. We don't have the ability to do that with LB 840 because of limited funding, and we don't have the ability to do it with RDBG.
Now, currently, this is only going to apply when they draw down some money.
Correct.
If they make a deal, then they draw down some money, then they match it.
Right.
Then the city owes the money back.
Right.
Remember, this is the city owes the money back. So
Right.
you're relying on people to pay.
Right. Interest deferred for the first 3 years. The reason that we did it that way is because the administrative fees that we'll charge to do this and the interest that we'll collect on that, hopefully by the time you get to the 3rd year, if there are drawdowns, that's going to cover the interest payment along with LB 840.
Okay.
Questions? No?
Motion in a second.
I'll make a motion to pass resolution 593 for the IRP grant funding.
Second. Tyler?
And
Aye.
before you vote, please,
No problem.
does the final one that you guys have these blanks filled in?
We don't have
I don't
one.
have one.
Okay, did you
Yeah, it's
hand
in
them
your
out to
files that I
everybody?
gave you tonight.
They were on the table in front of me.
Yep.
Well, does any of them have the blanks filled in? We have to fill in the blanks. The mayor and city administrator are authorized. The clerk and the street superintendent are authorized. Somebody has to be authorized.
And I think that you have, Susan, if I'm correct, a meeting with USDA. We talked about
I
it.
would presume they want the mayor and city administrator.
And I think that in that meeting that there'll be a lot more of the more the merrier, Bruce. If you can be there, that'd be great.
20 or 250,000.
Well, if you guys are good with the concept, you've got your motion, but the motion is pass a resolution with the mayor and city administrator authorized to do what is necessary.
Yeah, that sounds good.
You good with that then? Okay. Tyler?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, number 6, public hearing, 1 and 6 year road plan, 7:15 p.m. And just a reminder, we had the town hall meeting this summer. This is something we do every year to get these funding from the state. This does not mean we're going to pave anything. It's just a wish list of things that we would like to have done. And Dorothy?
I have a question as to the one street there, Brian.
Yep.
Is that in the plan because of it being straight over to the west to the ball fields?
That's one of the many reasons, and just the fact that it's gravel, and we'd like to eventually have it paved.
Well, I don't think it's very smart in the fact, we live on the corner there, and that is the hospital street. And when you have ball games, and I'm not disputing the fact of ball games, because that's fine.
Sure.
But the nights of the ball games, there is a lot of traffic that comes up there, turns and takes that corner to go straight over to the ball fields.
Right.
That is an emergency street with the hospital to the north, and I think that needs to be taken into some consideration there.
Probably our police will be right out there watching about that.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Again, it's a public hearing just for a wish list. Nothing is getting paved at this time.
I think if we don't keep moving, they'll never get paved. I've been in city council meetings for about, I don't know, 18 years now, and some of these have been talked about for 18 years. Speaking in behalf, I had to pave mine in front of my house. It became no choice. It just kind of came about, and it's what we had to do. And it does cost money, and you maybe have to take loans out, but we need to improve the town of Plainview and make it better. So we need to start doing some of these streets.
You guys do have 2 letters in front of you.
Yeah.
Stuff I gave you.
I know. Find her. The 50,000.
Anyone else wishing to speak for the public hearing?
Second, third.
I would say that Lincoln Street down by the ball fields does have the support of the current school board, and we will likely continue to budget funds to pay the share of the school district when the city council determines to go ahead and follow through with paving that.
Something that needs to be.
So they aren't going to move the bus shed closer, we are going to pay for the buses? Is that what that looks like eventually?
It's just a wish.
I know, but is that what that looks like?
For now. I know I can't speak on behalf of the school board because I missed the last couple of meetings.
School board, can you speak?
Is there any plans in the future to possibly move the bus shed closer to the school?
No,
that you know of right
there's
now?
no discussion at all at this point to do that. That would we don't have the land.
Right.
And so that would be quite an undertaking just to find land somewhere around our campus for it. That would be nice to have that at some point in time, but I don't anticipate that it's not a priority item at all.
Just a question, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon.
Anyone else wishing to speak for the public hearing? Go ahead.
Just a suggestion, because I work with other communities and we go through 1-6 road plans with other towns too. And some of the other ones, they consistently have the 1-6 year road plan, but they consistently pave 1 to 3 roads a year. Mm-hmm. It's something that the community expects. It just happens, and it stops a lot of the opposition and the pushback because it's just done. Mm-hmm. So when it, maybe something to consider.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm kind of seeing too. I mean, being new up here, but also, I mean, if you're going to buy a house on a gravel street, expect it to be paved. Just my suggestion.
I think my goal when I started 11 years ago was to look at the street plans, and Brian's quite well aware of this. They were kind of, I don't want to say neglected because that's not the right word, but they were consistently opposed, and I think that there was a need to start looking at some of these roads other than, and Bruce will tell you, I think the cul-de-sac and up by the Julian, up by the Manor were the last ones that were actually developed before that. We have been able to get some really good roads in and out of town now, secured. They did cost money. So I think that we need to always look forward to what we can do. And what you're looking at on the road plan, yes, it's for highway allocation, but they're also looking at the gap paving and eventually all gaps you would want in our future to probably be filled in. I mean, that's, and Dorothy, we're kind of confused. We're kind of looking at this, on the right road. I was under the impression you don't want it paved.
I'm just suggesting the fact that it would create more traffic on the hospitals. I mean, like the night of a game, the traffic coming up to that corner and turning to go directly, that I think the safety thing needs to be thought about there because of it being the hospital street for emergency vehicles.
I think that's well thought out.
Is it possible to turn like at the east corner of the east side of the park and go straight north?
You can.
There's a sign there now to do that.
It just depends on if you want to stop at one stop sign or 3 or 5 stop signs. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but
It would be looking at traffic flow.
it's traffic flow, yeah. Because we put the stop signs around all the school, whereas that's just, the only stop sign is at 2nd Street by the Evergreen Village. Where by your house, if you come up the hospital road and then go straight into the gate.
Well, if possibly, the nights of ball games, some of the police force could be somewhere in the area to kind of slow down some of that too.
Most definitely.
I hate to say it, but the way some people come around there, it's not very smart.
I would agree. And the only other thing, it's not really, a wish list too, like Susan said about the half-cent sales tax for the community building. I was always hoping that once the pool gets paid off, because you reallocate it, or you have to vote for the citizens, public hearings, is possibly, because there's a lot of people saying, the streets are going up and up, possibly doing something like that. If once the pool's paid off, educate the public, take it to a vote of the people, and maybe have half of the percent going to the community building, and the other half helping to pay for some of the streets. You'd still, obviously the homeowner would still pay some, but it would help out with the cost going up, that everybody that shops in town would help pay for our streets to be paid. Just an idea. Let's get a couple years down the road yet, but we'll cross that bridge when that pool gets paid off.
Are you, as city council, planning on developing Plainview north and east? Or are we staying status quo?
I am.
I would like to see it.
That's my plan.
Yeah.
Green, there's in every town has to have one. It's required by law, but we have a comprehensive plan that clearly details, and I think you're right. I think that's, and actually it was 3 different areas for housing development, and one of them was the Norda Johnson land, which will probably be never. But you also have the ones up by the ballpark and then up by the hospital, and I think we have taken an effort to go toward the up by Grant's place and get him all the neighbors he wants.
We should build it on the hill, not in the swamps.
Yeah, help him close the street.
I mean, if you want to look at a community that has no paved roads and that was once a county seat and completely died, look at Center. They don't have one paved street, and that's what happened to them. Some of you were on the council, it was probably done 1.5 years, 2 years ago, but we had acquired a lot in town that was empty for a while. It took a little bit of work from Bruce Curtis to get it. The person paid $10,000 for that lot because it was paved and had sidewalk. We're willing to pay for some paved stuff, if you want to do development. I'm not saying we're going to go and pave all the northeast side of town, but if you get into a habit of doing this on a regular basis, people become used to that, and you don't have this start and stop all the time.
I guess the only other thing I would say was, like you said, Osmond, they developed 2 streets, got it ready with water, sewer, everything, and I don't know how many houses are over there, 10 at least in those 2 developments, if not more.
Pierce did the same thing west of the high school. Yeah. Those 2 cul-de-sacs were full. You see that happening everywhere.
Okay. Final call for public comment. Motion to close the hearing. Second, June. Tyler?
Aye.
Bob? Pam? Julie? Okay. Discussion action resolution number 592, 1 and 6 year road plan.
Are you asking for a discussion about what we
No,
just
for the
discussed?
council. Public here, sorry, I was just waiting for a discussion from the council on a first and a second, just to approve it,
Okay.
so that we get our state funding.
I'll make the motion to pass resolution 592 for the 1 and 6 Street plan.
Second?
I'll second.
Bob?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Motion passes. Let's see. Number 14, discussion action, resolution number 594, installation of deaf child sign on 6th Street.
There, we dug up the details that had been there from last meeting. The information I had said, beginning at the intersection of 6th and Pilcher, and running north to a point a half block north of 6th and Woodland. So a block and a half area. I would point out while we were looking at this, and pulled it up for the blank on the computer, we had in our system, in my office, the resolution 484 from 2012, 2 signs to be authorized near 601 East Woodland for a handicapped child.
Correct.
Are there signs
Yes.
there
They're still
about
there.
a handicapped
It's
child?
2 different residences.
Okay. This is going to be very much the same
Very much the
area.
same, yeah. So this will be for the north-south, and the other one's for the east-west.
Okay, as long as
They're
you're
catty
clear on
corner
that.
from each other, the residences.
So this would put up the signs in that block and a half stretch that you discussed last
Right.
month.
I'd just like to say, if we could put up signs, we could put up signs, which is great, but we still need enforcement behind those signs.
True. This thing is just a caution, right? It
Just
doesn't really
letting somebody know there's a
impose
death, yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
anything particularly enforceable, but it's a caution anyway.
Okay.
I questioned the same thing, but I would never want to hurt someone by not having a sign, Tim, so I'm, all in favor of it. But there are signs up there, and I question, you just putting signs out for the sake of putting signs is a little iffy, but this one is fine. I mean, I can see where it would go.
I make the motion to pass resolution 594 for the installation of the deaf child sign.
Second?
I'll second it.
Julie?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Bob? Pam?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 15, discussion action, resolution number 595, signing of year-end certification of city street superintendent.
And before you think that's Kurt, it's not.
No, it's like Miller and Associates.
Yeah, it's an engineer that has to be certified so that we can get an additional $3,000, I believe it still is, on top of the highway allocation that we would get after the 1 and 6. So I think Kurt thought, or no, not Kurt, Troy. I think Troy thought he was being appointed to something, so I had to caution him, no, you're safe.
The discussion, basically something the state requires, like you said, to get money.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 595.
Second? Bob?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Pam? Motion carries. Number 16, discussion action, request for changes to parking on east side of North King Street. Dr. Art, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, I shared some information with you. Appreciate your consideration. I couldn't help but think of that. I don't know who sings that song, Sign, Sign Everywhere, Sign.
Did you get
And,
the other two from the past years? Why have these signs around?
I didn't get that.
You can have mine.
So, well, you can just share it with me and
you can
everybody,
have
I
mine.
guess.
Everybody has one.
Signs go up and then they stay up forever, I think, even after,
Right.
maybe they might not be necessary. So I just, as an advocate for,
It was a nice
For school.
volleyball game that you covered.
for school, yes, for kids, I visited with a couple members of the council, the mayor, just sharing, and of course send information to everybody. Just would like you to reconsider maybe allowing those spaces to be used by students during the school day. We have a majority of our kids exit our school out of the locker room doors, and so straight to the east, straight to King Street. And so they They would like to have, the quickest access as opposed to maybe, down on Maple by the pool or whatever. So, so I, just kind of watched and looked, and there's 10 spots that are reserved for 3 residents on King. Since we told our kids a month or 6 weeks ago, I talked with Chief about, okay, we really need to kind of, tell kids they shouldn't be parking there, and our kids have done a good job of not parking there. Nobody's parking there. I mean, I haven't seen anybody park there in well over a month.
Yesterday on the very south.
Yeah, well, okay, you got maybe a little more time to check the street. But at any rate, so I didn't know what the history was or the necessity to reserve those 10 spots.
If you want to.
Well, I didn't bring the glasses.
Well, and I think that's the part, Darren, too, so there is the history of this. I've been through the history of this, and I'm not sure, somehow it got out there, the fact that just because, something could be done, I'll get this done. Well, no, I mean, I think it's workable, and I think it's a workable situation, but there was many reasons why that was talked about both times. I wasn't here for the original, but I can tell you the second time around is that you're dealing with a narrow street, and we've dealt with other narrow streets as well. And I appreciate the fact on the parking, but as a city administrator, I can't look at that street from a safety standpoint and say that it should be allowed to have parking unless you did it on the southern half, because you got loading and unloading, and there's no way in this current trucking climate that we can get anything up there, including the garbage trucks, to go in and out. Yeah. So if you're willing to compromise,
well, certainly. I mean, I don't know that I'm in a position to compromise. I think I'm in a position to whatever the council decides. I understand that to get into where the dumpsters are, and we do have a lot of deliveries that come in there. If we were to restrict, I mean, that on the west side, the cars on either side of that driveway, which we could do, but to hear you say, okay, we've got 8 spots, a driveway, 1 spot, a driveway, and 1 spot, and then handicap. Yeah, I mean, if we were to restrict just these and leave 4 or 5 or 6, that would be helpful. Again, and when we have activities, and I shared this with you, and sure enough, I had the day the mayor came up, we had a volleyball game starting at
2 o'clock, 2:30.
Yeah, in the afternoon, and parking is premium around there, obviously. And when we have guests come to our school, I like to have them have an opportunity to park less than, a couple blocks away from the school, and so those would be valuable spots.
Is there anybody here that lives on the street?
I don't see anybody.
What vague recollection of this I might have is that the people that lived there at the time, there's been turnover probably, came and essentially said, we can't have anybody come to coffee, my dad can't visit me, we never have a place we can park anything. Now, most of them have a driveway of some kind, so that's not 100% true, but it could be argued that the residences should get 1 spot. If there's 10, you could block off 3 spaces and leave open 7, or something like that.
Well, I'm just talking about the northern half where the Masonic Temple is, and then going back, there's a house that has a driveway that could be potentially blocked, and you know which one it is. It's right across, I think, from...
where Mr. Alt lived.
Yeah. So then you look at that, then you go, but if you go further south, you're talking about a couple of houses that now face their front door to the south, and they have, that'd be like side yard parking, especially right there on the corner. And I could see those, because right now it's set up for the entire street to be, and I could see that, but it was just brought to my attention that it was already a done deal, and that was never the case, because there's a lot of research and history on this too, including no one thought about the, and I know that Buds, when I talk to them, absolutely cannot maneuver if they are parked in that area to come up into that driveway. Now, that would be a consideration, I think, that you guys would want to have. So, however you do it is fine, but there's more than just saying, let's just open it up.
So if both of the spots on either end, north and south of the driveway, that would probably open that up.
I don't think so. I seen the recycling truck going there, and when he backed in, he was clearing those parking spots, trying to get back in there. And I did some surveillance, and I've been around the school half a dozen times in the last month. Morning, afternoon, and there's a minimum of 10 to 20 spots open all the way around the school. Every time I drove by, there's spots here and there. There's even spots on the east side.
And for the last 4 weeks, I've been checking every day, and there's been 4 spots, at least 4 spots on the west side of that King Street there, open.
But
That
I'll-
students are not parking
But I'll
it.
speak for the 14-year-olds, because now the law changed, if you're less than 5,000, because now I'm in, my daughter can drive, watch out. But that class, they're all turning 14, so every one of them, you're adding another car, so you need to think about that. Coming up, how many more are coming? They're all driving to school.
We do have enrollment, a good little enrollment increase. I mean, not a tremendous surge, but so I know that back in the day, you know, you were parked all the way up to 20 and such, and I think for a lot of years, well, and for a while, kids were parking there anyway when they weren't supposed to. You know,
Dr. Roller, are
a
you
while,
asking for students parking or for public parking?
Well, both essentially, I guess. Or
If students
or
are parked there, then the visitors
so
cannot park there. That doesn't
So
make any sense.
I'm just asking
You're
the
not
council
running
to
the meeting.
I'm just asking the council to reconsider the decision, the necessity for it to be reserved for the residents. If the council decides we need to just have it be no parking for safety reasons or for access reasons, then that's a council decision, and that's what would be best for it. I just question the necessity to reserve those 10 spots for those 3 residents. Whether students get to use them or a guest get to use them, you know, that would be great, but I would trust the wisdom of the council on what's best for it.
I just want to point out that, like on Veterans Day, the students are very good about not parking in the front so that visitors for the program, we appreciate that. So they can move. The second part is just consider that you send them to weightlifting class so they can become healthier. So let's not let them park too close to them.
Well, you know what, students, they're never going to work any harder than they have to. So, you know, if you something you want to consider more, get more community input. I mean, obviously, you know, I just appreciate you using some of your valuable time on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I don't know who lives in the north house. It's really, you know, like you say, people move, but the middle house, I know who lives there. In the south house, he has dual residency between here and Baltimore, so he comes and goes.
All line.
Oh, at the north one.
So, tabling for more study, who's gonna study?
We have discussion action, yeah, we don't really have a resolution or an ordinance to change it. I mean, we can discuss it.
You want to look at it, put it on the special meeting if we have it quickly? I don't want a lot of them there.
Right.
Yeah. Or can't discuss it for meetings another day.
I would, you know, say also, I mean, I haven't had anybody notify my office that we need to move cars so we can get access to that driveway. So, I mean, I don't know that it's, I don't know how big a problem it is, but I recognize that it's important to acknowledge that vehicles do come in and out of there.
Right.
But I don't have any knowledge of routine calls to move cars.
And all the dumpsters for the high school are by the egg shop and band room entrance, in right? Okay.
They are.
Okay. Thank you. Number 17, discussion. Wesley Eisenman requested to discuss meeting with city administrator.
He decided, whatever reason, Melissa just said he's not coming, but I do have a couple things I want to hand out.
Wesley said he is not going to be coming today.
I'm not surprised. There was an incident on the 27th of August where I was dealing with, a neighbor of his. And one of the things was unlicensed vehicles. And in order to get something going and try to move things, which is really not even in my job description on that, I went ahead and tried to make something happen with those unlicensed vehicles and get them out. After that was done, by the way, that was a good conversation. After that was done, it was a Jenkins. Within a half hour, Wesley came into the office, went straight back to my office. And he started in the conversation about, what are you doing with them? What are you doing? And I told him, really, not your concern. And then he started evidently recording. But what he did was then say, well, you're going to tell me what to do with my business, with my house, and what I can and cannot do. You can, I won't go through it because this is where the crux of this is, expletives. Well, I will tell you this, in 3 times, and I've made this clear too when I talked to Brian, 3 times in 11 years, I've lost my cool. And this was one time when he was in my office that I basically let him have it with all barrels. And I apologize. And that's one of the things I want to hand out is, regardless of whether he's here or not, there needs to be a very clear understanding of what actually happened. And he recorded it. I have no problem. I used language that my mother would definitely wash my mouth out with soap. But you will see several things in this packet, and I just want to put this to bed. Because I believe he tried to ascertain an attorney. I won't go there either. So what I did, this was on this particular Jenkins property, and I did this out of being a zoning administrator, more than a city administrator, is the rules and regulations on having a home-based business vary on what your home-based business is. It's clearly in our ordinance that you cannot take machinery or things and rebuild or do things like that. I tried to make it so, even with Jenkins, that you could do a hobby. I said, do me a favor, I'm trying to help out, it's not really my job, but you got unlicensed vehicles galore, I'm trying to help out the council, get rid of them. You're not going fast enough. Well, they started, and they actually worked out a plan, but I'm going to pass this. This is what really is probably the most important thing. This is the property in question. You can take and pass them down, you can look at them.
Oh, they're all the same.
They're just all, they're not all the same, but I'd like you to take a look at some of these. This is today. This all occurred in August. I immediately, and you're going to see behind the packet, the text messages immediately the next day, I tried to reach out, apologize for my language, but not for the content, because I think one of the things, and I sent out the email, and you've got that too, with Chief Yostin and Bruce Curtis, is that, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of trying to do the right thing and not getting any cooperation, and then having someone of this nature come in, and if anyone knows Wesley at all, knows that he can be very hot-tempered. I'm trying to think of the right word to do it. It's the way it is. So, and Mr. Curtis asked, and he told me a couple of suggestions. The only problem was Bruce, he came back in the office uninvited, just came back in there. I do apologize. I did back when it happened in August and September, talked to Brian, apologized for my stooping to a level that I don't like to, but sometimes you have to almost trying to get something across, and I think the point of the pictures here is I got nothing across. Talk to Mike Napperstadt about it.
And that brings it to another issue. I mean, but you're beyond your topic. I mean, the topic at the moment is the guy was mad. He thought he had been rudely treated, and to some extent he was probably. But Mike is entirely within his correct interpretation of the guy has a mess that he shouldn't have there. We just haven't taken any action against it yet.
Right.
He can come in and say you can't do this to me, but he's dead wrong. He's got a great big mess in a residential district. So I don't think there's anything the matter with Mike scolding him about it, but the only issue at the moment is just the tenor of the conversation.
And the tenor was awful. And I felt really awful about it immediately, and you'll see the text messages, and I keep everything. I document and I record
I think
everything.
it brings to mind, if we do undertake some enforcement, you'll probably see him in here screaming at you. So be it.
And it'll probably be the
Something
same.
will need to be done eventually.
The pictures are all of the 2 Jenkins residences.
Right, and this had nothing to do with Wesley. He was upset, and I didn't even talk to him. It wasn't about him at all.
Right.
He came up and was totally upset about Jenkins. I have had no conversation with Wesley other than that he said, if you're going to tell me what to do, and I told him in very colorful language, yes, I can.
Is he the only person that's running a business out of their driveway / alley? Because I would say no.
I got about 11 of them, Julie.
There you are. So it's not just him, it's
Nude,
we've got
nude.
other issues, that we've got people running and fixing cars and driveways and alleys, and that needs to be addressed for the whole town.
Right.
And this one goes beyond the scope of that too. And the same thing goes to what I was, and I'll drop it here because this is, since he's not here, but I think it's important the council knows step by step. I document everything. I know what went on. I had it on camera. I was totally, colorfully hot. And part of that was because he just comes storming back into my office, which is always somewhat open. But, you know, maybe that's it. Maybe we should probably do something about that. But every time I go, if I want to do something, and I've talked to Bob about this too, if I want to do something in terms of enforcement, whether it's going to be zoning or anything else, I have to have a backup. I need somebody to go in there and say, you know, this is what needs to be done. I can't have nuisance properties being told that they go to a housing board. Our housing board takes care of grants for rehab. I cannot have this happen. You know, I'm out of options. If you want me to help clean up parts of these crappy parts, and I've got the, what?
LB 256.
Well, the R256 is already passed, and you'll see that in January, but that won't help on this case.
What about that slum blight? Wow.
Well,
Is that
that's
just a certain part? I seen that map.
That's goes down.
That's just down
But anyway,
That's
is
just
there-
for downtown revitalization for the $450,000.
If you feel, and I will say this, I've done this before, if you feel necessary, because I take my job very seriously, but if you feel it's necessary to somehow you want to put a reprimand for my colorful language, all I ask is that you let me put a rebuttal along with it. I've done this before, and like I said, there's 3 times, and I can tell you all 3 times. One, the phone was thrown at me. The other time, he colorfully scolded the entire city staff for a poor job at snow removal. I took that personally. And this one, he came in and it was none of his business. So this is where it's at, how we got on the agenda, and why it could have been handled somewhere. I apologize for my colorful language. I did not use the Lord's name in vain, though.
To some extent, as I had suggested to Mike when this first came up, I think partly it's, for all of the other issues, it's a building design problem. I really don't think you should have closed offices clear back in the corner where people can come scream at you. You could get out a big saw and put 6-foot windows all the way to the back of the building, and then folks would be at least in front of God and everybody if they come in and want to talk to somebody. It's hard to remodel that building the way it's laid, but you could certainly do something with some windows or something like that. I mean, it's like when you walk into Midwest Bank, you know, if anybody's conducting an argument there, everybody sees it. You've got exposure to the public there, but that's not a question for tonight. It might be something to think about.
Well, is this, Mike, is this your job to enforce this?
No, there is a, you can have, and by the way, there's been questions about what a zoning administrator can do and can't do, and surveying, and all these things get brought up. Brian went along with me and knows exactly what I do when I go out surveying, but here's the short version of what a zoning administrator, this isn't city administrator, it's a zoning administrator in the state of Nebraska. Chapter 11 is what I went to on this particular, and I've got ordinances too. They talk about enforcement, and that's not my job, you know, but we're kind of stuck in a quandary because it's an ordinance that needs to be followed. So all I can do is simply tell them you're not following the ordinance. They can in turn say, go blank yourself, which is what they did. And I'm at the mercy of then probably turning to the next step was to Bruce Curtis and write a formal letter. There's a process, but I'm not the enforcer, no.
Well, let me slide this forward a little bit into my comments if I could. It has the same effect. We do not have to have, Mike and I, or particularly I do not have to have written citations by the police to prosecute people. I mean, we had a couple on Stewart, and I filed on those tickets, and he paid those fines. But now, right now, Stewart is looking at a citations, excuse me, not correct, prosecution papers filed against him by me with no citations for dangerous dog. And he won't plead guilty. And I said, what do you mean you won't plead guilty? He said, well, the police told me if I gave away my dog and put up this leash, it was okay. I'm not guilty of nothing. I won't plead guilty. So that's going to be going to trial. And when the judge asked Mr. Stewart, who's your witnesses going to be that you're justified in doing this? In open court, he said, the cops. They're on my side. He didn't say they're on my side, but he said the cops were his witnesses. That's going to make a little difficulty for me if I'm going to prosecute this stuff. But it's the same problem. And I can do this for Mike, too. I can file criminal complaints without police support. And maybe we've got to do some more of that. I have tended to avoid it, but if the council wants us directives, we can. That also goes to these other issues of what's going to be done, but that's coming along in its own due course, so you just have to be patient with us there. I guess I've been kind of taking the position that the town can only stand so many uproars in any given month, and we have to limit what we try to do all at the same time.
But I mean, Bruce is not the one that has to go to all these, is he? Can't the other officers go with you? I mean, why don't you just take somebody with you?
Well, this is a case where I didn't even go down.
Oh.
I mean, they just came in right to me. So I have not done anything with Wes. This was a case where he wanted to come and complain about, I'm sure he recorded on the telephone, and I know what it said, so I apologize for the language. But I also know that enough is enough. And anyone that's been in that neighborhood knows King Street has been running rampant with activity, and not only that, but this individual doesn't get along with his neighbors. In the summertime, Mike Napperstadt wanted to know what I was going to do about it because he has to deal with it. In the summer, you can see him out there in the middle of the street just screaming. And I know that the police have been called numerous times down to take care of altercations, I think that. So I know they've been down there. So it's just one individual case, but I also know that you're on the housing or the health board, and we've got some individuals, and I've got to take care of one that is totally out of control.
Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Can I just say, I think that you try to help a lot of people to your disadvantage sometimes.
Oh, I know that, Kareem.
Well, at least you learned where your limits are, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you learned something out of this.
Oh, I learned.
So what are you going to do with this guy?
Right now?
Anytime. I wouldn't even let him come in my office. I wouldn't let him come talk to Melissa.
I don't think.
Can you tell him he can't come to a city office? Can anybody tell him that?
We've always held an open door policy. I'd rather not. I've always been good. I've tried to sit there, and even with the ones in the past that were done, they've come in, and I've helped them out in other situations. And and you let bygones be bygones, but you just know that this is the case that happens sometimes. That
there's a threshold that when they step over, they have to be stopped.
We regularly, without trying to exaggerate anything, and I'll just drop it at this because we got things to do, but we deal with 3 to 5 of that nature every day that come in are not happy with something. You learn to deal and try the best you can to get along with them and work with them, but sometimes you can't get it across to them what you're trying to say. And so, yes, over 11 years, yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Well, the one thing I guess I look at too, and it might just be an easy fix, is it's one thing for them to come in the front door and stand at the front counter in front of everybody and do it, but it's another when they go back and they know they have you in a corner and you're kind of out of sight, out of mind. There's an easy fix to it, and honestly, where your front counter is, put up a little, and it's not going to stop anybody that's just crumbled or violent. We'll just put up a little swinging gate, saloon door type thing, just to basically trap them in the front. If you want them to come back, come on back, and they can walk right through it.
Yeah, I don't remember the circumstances. He kind of was in a rush and just kind of pushed past. I don't even know if he asked.
But I mean, about the time that somebody pushes past, I'd be calling Bruce so fast.
I called Jerry.
I mean,
it was too late. He was already back there, and I had to call Jerry.
Well, I mean, there's a point where he's not allowed back there just to push himself through.
I would get up from your office and go up to the front so you have witnesses of the conversation.
That's that learning curve.
I have offices in another town, and when people come in, it's a similar setup. My office is towards the hallway, but when someone comes in and requests to see one of us, we come out to the lobby area and we invite them back to our office. Otherwise, business is conducted in the front lobby.
Yeah.
We don't have the cameras.
I deal a lot with the same things. To be honest with you, there's a lot of times that if there's something like that, it settles down a lot if you're standing at the front counter. It's no different than the bank, wherever it be. That if you're out there in public and you're standing there and there's other eyes to see it, it seems like it kind of knocks the temperature down a little bit.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you're closed doors and it's one-on-one.
No, I
agree.
Totally agree.
Well, in like one office, it's all women when we're there, and if we have people come and scream, it's everywhere. But if the receptionist, the person who would be Melissa, is up front alone, and we hear the screaming because we're down the hall, we will get up and go out there. So we don't say anything. Sometimes we just stand there and listen, but they know that we're there to back it up if something were to go bad. Because we don't always have the cops in our place either, even though they're in the same building.
So did the council answer your question? Who would support you on this? I don't think they did yet. At least I didn't hear it.
It's Corinne. It's okay. I mean, I will work with the council on how then. Is it support? No. I need to hear probably some more, but I will do. I'm sure I will from each one of the council.
Number 18, discussion update on recall election for council member. The results, Shannon said would be by noon today, and I stopped in a little after 1 and she was at lunch, but I was informed by her not deputy, but her other employee that Julie was retained, and that's why she's still here right now. Otherwise, she would not be sitting.
Good job, Julie.
And then we have the official stuff also from Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon and I have been keeping close contact. She said at 11 o'clock this morning and at the official canvassing, just because that was probably, we wanted to get to the council, and the mayor was down there too, so that was good. I'm glad you were down there, Brian, to see it. I think the accusations on the election were so far wide that it was nice to get an official canvassing and have it done correctly, that it's done. So.
Number 19, city attorney comments.
Well, I mentioned to you the Stewart thing and how it started. I have 6 dangerous dog complaints on prosecution against Stewart, involving kennel, involving not registering a dangerous dog. Now he's gotten rid of one. He's still got another full-grown dog, just like the first one. There are 6 counts in the paperwork. No citations to work with from the police department, but they're there. I offered to him today, just to bring you totally up to date, to reduce it to 1 guilty plea for 1 dangerous dog citation and pay a fine and build the appropriate kennel according to the code. He refused to do that because he was told everything was okay. So he says he's gotten rid of the big dog that did the biting, and it's supposed to be in Omaha, so I'm told. I think I believe that. I guess that remains to be seen, but I don't know that we track it any further. And we're set for trial on the 11th of December. And, it's going to make a big uproar over not much, but I don't think you can just let him go. Now, he does have a judgment against him for the better part of $1,000, private judgment by the people that own the little dog. And he's paid a couple hundred for those local, low-grade citations that were issued that he could have come in and paid $20 for, but didn't. And so when they were filed, we went with $50 fines and costs, costing almost $100 each. But we still have to resolve the dangerous dog thing, so that's where it stands. The other update on the work comp litigation that's moving, there's discovery being exchanged. The latest we have is 300 pages of material passed back and forth to look at. They're working on it, but we won't be discussing the merits of any of that here. Otherwise, if you have questions, but both of these things are churning along slowly.
Dare I ask about the house by Steinkrause's?
Well, that's kind of falls.
It's been a
in
few
the-
months that we haven't talked about.
I know, that falls in the too many irons in the
Gotcha,
fire
gotcha.
thing.
Well,
We've got the
priority
house by
right now.
Steinkrause's, we've also
Just
got
ask.
the Pinnacle building that needs to go down
Yes.
with $600,000 worth of tax liens against it, and we're gonna have to sue the IRS. That'll be fun.
I'd like to get past this first, and then, yes, that'll be a,
But it has to be done. You
Yes.
can't leave these things to just sit there and rot. But they don't have quite as much priority of what we're currently churning out.
Council comments?
How about the Hanks house, Mike? Anything going on there?
no, but thank you for reminding me. I'll go. I know we've had the conversation with Daniel. We've also had the conversation with Rich, and I know there's a slight impasse, and now the weather's turning, so I think tomorrow we got some 50-degree days. Let's find out. That needs to come down.
Okay.
One way or the other.
Did the asbestos get checked or whatever?
Asbestos yes, and they've done it, but it's not come back. But I believe, since you're talking asbestos, the asbestos has come back, but I'm not sure of the results yet from the hardware. So,
Oh, I meant for, okay.
I know, we got both.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
both. But I ordered an asbestos check
Right, yep.
on the Hanks house, and they were able to go in, I think, whenever I told you that was happening, it was probably the next Monday.
Yeah.
Wondering about, so the hardware store, were you talking about the asbestos at the hardware? So is there an update that can be public on something like that?
The only update I have, and actually it's fairly solid, but I don't know the background of it, because of what's involved. But I know that the mover that they hired, Dave Frederick came in, he was waiting for the asbestos, which is why I tried to get a hold of that. I know it's back. I got to get it from Chris and Lee and Randy and find out where the asbestos is. If they can't locate asbestos, it will be presumed to be all asbestos, which makes it a little more difficult to sit there and sift around. But I was told by Lee that they found a couple good spots. So that's always a good sign. If they can find a couple good spots to test it and it comes back negative, we might be sitting there looking a little bit better. So he's ready to go. Dave says he's ready to go. I'm a little concerned about it, Grant, and I'll talk to you, but when that time comes, whatever help you need from the guys, because I think there's going to be some wall issues that we want to make sure we're on top of that.
Kind of like when the locker plant went down. In my office, we practiced speed drills to get under your desk.
Yeah, well,
I want to look into
I've been
that.
told we can't even be in our building structure. But I just wonder because, it's become, I understand fires happen, it was a bad deal for everybody, but on the other side, that was March 1st, so.
Well, the other issue we're running into too is there's still the gun safe in there and people have been trying to break in. Starting to look at safety issues.
They need to sturdy up their
The plywood that's just
plywood that
leaning
keeps
against
falling
it.
over on my sidewalk every day.
It's starting to become a real problem. So.
I'll just keep close contact every time he comes in, because I can't give him the go-ahead yet. He comes in and says, once, not until we see the asbestos. So.
Good. Anything else, Paul?
Nope, that's it for me.
Julie?
Thanks.
I would just like to say thank you to everybody who voted to retain me. When I took this position, like I said before, it was a position I didn't think that I even got paid for. I did it out of volunteering. And I really appreciate the votes. When I took the oath, my oath was to uphold the ordinances. And these ordinances weren't just drafted by me, they were drafted over the years that this community has been going. They're going to continue to be building, and that's why I'm here, is for the city and for the people who live in it. So, thank you.
Pam? Tyler? I just had one real quick before we adjourn. Shelley had asked me last month, brought up, and Dr. Aldous, so you'll find this interesting, about the pickup from parents and grandparents and stuff. So 3 times in the last month, I parked in her driveway, and I thought, we'll see if it's like Bruce or Tyler said. You know, obviously not a marked car, but they know it's the mayor's vehicle, and you see him sitting in it watching the traffic. The first day, her neighbor's driveway was blocked once for 16 seconds. The second time, no driveway was blocked, and then yesterday, the neighbor's driveway was blocked just as people pull forward, you know, and there's not enough room. Her neighbor's driveway was blocked for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then her driveway was blocked once for about 10 seconds. So I've done it 3 times and then twice. The first 2 times, Tyler was also up there further down by the barricade in the marked unit, you know, so far, I mean, other than yesterday, the one time her neighbor's driveway was blocked, and I see them, same people every day, you know, on the same line and doing a good job. This one pulls up, the next one pulls up, you know, and they try not, you know, so. But I just want you to let her know that I did take it seriously, and I did park it 3 times in the driveway and watch the traffic. So. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for coming, we're adjourned.